We're going to go ahead and get started. I show it's 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, so depending on where you are, that might change a little bit. I am Dr. Christy Mulkey, and I am the workshop coordinator for 240 Tutoring, and I am live with you today to do a little GK Math. And so I'm live here in our FTCE study and test prep group every Tuesday at 11 Central Standard Time. So depending on where you are, it might be 12 down in parts of Florida. So if you are interested in getting some specific help for your exam, this is where to be. If at any point during this video, those of you who are with us live, you have a question or a comment, just drop it in the comments. I've got an extra device here where I'm watching those, and I'll try to address those as we go. If you are watching this after the fact, after it's been recorded, you can still put comments in. I'm in this Facebook group frequently, and I will gladly answer those even after the live video has ended. All right, so we're gonna get started and do a little math together today. So I'm gonna share my screen with you. And you should see my PowerPoint. All right. Hopefully that all is working, just checking and making sure. Yes, that looks to be working correctly. So today we're going to be looking at the GK Math Competency 3, and I split this up. We're going to spend 2 weeks in Competency 3, and that's because it's a little bit difficult, and so we'll talk about that a little bit more. If you've missed Competencies 1 and 2, those videos are right here in our Facebook group. You can either scroll down through the feed to find them, or you can click on that little videos tab over on the left-hand side of your screen and find all the videos there. They're also on YouTube with a playlist for the same name as this Facebook group. So we're going to jump right in. Again, this is specific to Florida GK Math, and I'm going to give you some tips and strategies to try to make this easier for you. We are looking at Competency 3, which is knowledge of algebraic thinking and the coordinate plane. Now, basically, I split this into 2 parts. Today, we're going to look at the algebraic thinking piece, and next week, we're going to look at the coordinate plane. So this is what we're looking at today, that algebraic thinking. And my pen's being hesitant today. So these pieces, oh my goodness. And then next week, we'll look at the coordinate plane. So that's where we're going to be today. And I want to, just before we even get started, do not feel bad if you are struggling with this competency. And let me tell you why. Math, and specifically algebra, if you don't use it, you lose it. Not being able to do these problems cold is not a measure of your intelligence. It's not. It's simply that you probably haven't done algebra in a long time. Even if you're in a university program, you may have not been required to take an algebra class. Maybe you took statistics or some other math course for your math credits, or some teaching elementary math for those of you looking at going elementary certification. So do not feel bad about this. Guys, even some of these, I have a strong math background, and I had to stop and go, okay, I know I've made a mistake. What did I miss? Where did I mess up? Because I haven't had algebra, we won't talk about how many years, but I'm older than a lot of you probably watching. And so I haven't done algebra in a really long time. So if this is kind of foreign to you, don't let it hurt your self-esteem. Just know that's really common. So we're going to refresh those skills, dig them out of the back of the filing cabinet drawers of your brain, and bring those forward so you remember how to do some of this basic algebra. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to hope my pen is cooperative today because it's hesitating already. So this first one is number 18. All of these questions come from the FTCE website. And so these are the free and public questions, and they give you the answers. But here's the tricky part. They don't give you the explanation for those answers. And so I'm going to walk you through those to help you see not only what is the right answer, but how do I get to that correct answer, okay? So we're going to work these, and if you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully my pen's going to cooperate, or this is going to be real fun. So this says, Which of the following is the solution of the inequality? So we're looking at -3 is less than 2x plus 1, which is less than 5. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this as two separate inequalities. The first thing I'm going to do, here we go, is look at this part right here. I'm going to take this as two separate inequalities. And then I'm going to look at, all right, I'm going to do this with my mouse. This part right here. All right. So I'm actually going to look at this as two separate inequalities. Now, I'm going to start with that -3 is less than 2x plus 1. Y'all, ever since the hurricane, my internet company has been struggling. And when the internet is slow, my little pen doesn't work well. So I'm going to do this with my mouse. And I have an internet booster coming today. So hopefully those problems will be solved. So just bear with my messy handwriting for a little bit. So we're looking at -3 is less than 2x plus 1. So again, we separated this into two inequalities. So when you see those two less than signs, I'm basically taking it in two chunks, okay? So I need to isolate this x, all right? And I'm going to do that with inverse operations, okay? So I'm going to start with subtracting 1 from each side of this inequality. So over here, if I subtract 1 and I was adding 1, those cancel each other out. If I do -3 minus 1, a negative minus that 1, I'm now going to have -4. So think I'm -3 on a number line. I subtract 1 more, it's actually going to move me more negative. So it becomes -4. You can think that, add the opposite, all that business. You don't have to remember those rules if you just think about a number line. So -4 is greater than 2x. Okay, so now I'm here. Now I'm going to isolate that x even more. This means multiply when I have a number next to a letter, so 2 times x. So the inverse operation of that would be division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that will cancel out to the 2 on this side, and it leaves me with -4 divided by 2, which is going to give me -2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and I'm dividing a negative by a positive. It's a negative number. So I'm left with -2 is less than x. -2 is less than x, okay? Now I'm going to work the other side of this inequality, okay? So I'm going to take that 2x plus 1 is less than 5. All right, so now I'm just looking at the middle and the other side. So the first part I looked at the beginning and the middle. Now I'm looking at the middle and the right-hand side. All right, same principle. I'm trying to isolate that x. I'm trying to isolate that x. So I'm going to take this +1 and I'm going to do -1 on both sides. So whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. The +1 and the -1 cancel each other out. I'm now left with 2x is less than 5 minus 1 is 4. All right. So now I've got to isolate that x. Same thing I did over here. This implies multiplication. So the inverse operation would be divide. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Those 2's now cancel each other out, and I'm left with x is less than, and I've got 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now I'm left with an equation that looks like this, or an expression. -2 is less than x, which is less than 2. So I just combined the two things I had. I knew where X went. It was in the middle. And so now I'm left with this. Now I'm going to think about this like a number line. Let's say I had a number line and this point was 0. And we went over here and this point or this line was -2. So, you know, 1 might be right there. And then over here, I go this way, and this would be +2. What this is telling me is X has to be in between here. So it can't be -2. So it'd be starting at the closest number, and it could be anywhere to right up before the +2. Now, if we look at these answer choices, X has to be greater than -2, so it rules out A, and less than +2, so that rules out C. Well, 4, if we look at this number line, would be way over here. The only answer choice that's in that range is going to be 0. So the correct answer is B. And when you're first looking at this, the trick is knowing to separate that into two inequalities. So what we did up here, where we looked at 3x is less than 2x plus 1, solve that down to x, and then we looked at 2x plus 1 is less than 5, solve that down to x, and that led us to right here. Okay, so that's how you work this problem. Any questions? Not seeing anything in the comments. All right, so we're going to keep moving. I'm actually going to exit the slideshow for just a second and see if my pen will pick back up. Okay, so I'm going to just bear with me for a second. All right. Hopefully that's still working on your end. And we're going to try that pen again. And we're going to move on to number 19. So again, some more algebra here. It says solve for x. We've got 4x minus 1 divided by 5 equals 2x plus 1. Again, we need to isolate the x using inverse operations. Now I'm going to attempt to write, and we're going to see what happens. All right, so we have 4. Let's try this again. Nope. Okay, we're going to work with the maths. Improvising, teachers, this is what we do. All right, 4x minus 1. I need to rewrite this. It's just how my brain works. Divided by 5 equals 2x plus 1. Okay, now what I'm going to do is try to isolate the x's. Now we have x's on both sides, so that's going to be a little bit tricky. Here's how my brain thinks through it. I'm going to get rid of this division sign because it's making things complicated. So if I'm dividing by 5, I know the inverse would be to multiply by 5, and that will cancel this out. Also means I'm going to multiply this whole expression by 5. So I'm left with 4x minus 1 equals 5 times 2x plus 1. Now, what I'm going to need to do is distribute that 5 with these parentheses. So 5 times 2x would be 10x, and 5 times 1 would be 5. So I have 10x plus 5. And over here, I still have my 4x minus 1. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is try to get those x's on the same side. So I see this as multiplying by 10x. So I'm going to, actually not multiply. I've got a positive 10x. I'm sorry. I was worried about this mouse not cooperating. I have a positive 10x. So if I have a positive 10x, I can subtract 10x from both sides. All right. So I hope you're with me still. That's going to cause them to cancel out on this side. So I had a positive 10x, I'm going to do minus 10x. If I have 10, right with me, negative 10x and a positive 4, that's going to give me negative 6x minus 1 equals, and all I have left on this side is 5. Now we can keep working this equation. I'm going to move over here where I can have a little bit more space. I'm going to rewrite that. Negative 6x minus 1 equals 5. Now I'm going to get rid of that minus 1 by doing the opposite. I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So that cancels that out. And I'm left with negative 6x equals 5 plus 1 is 6. Almost done, guys. Now to get that x by that self, now I'm multiplying negative 6. I'm going to divide by that negative 6. That's going to cause this to cancel out. And I'm going to have positive 6 divided by negative 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. And if I'm dividing with a negative, the answer is going to be negative. So x equals negative 1. All right, x equals negative 1. So the correct answer here is B. So it's all about just balancing that equation, trying to isolate the unknown variable, that x, with inverse operations. There's a couple of different ways you could have gone about this. This is just how my brain processed it. Doesn't have to be done in this exact order. All right. Now, I watched my teenage daughter do this, not my oldest, but my younger one. And when I gave her this problem, she started with, she goes, I'm just going to plug in the answer choices. I was like, okay. She said, I'm going to start with this 1 and negative 1 because the fraction is complicated. And so she started with the negative 1. She found out the negative 1 worked and she was done. So you could absolutely do it that way. Now, if the negative 1 and the positive 1 hadn't worked, plugging in those fractions would have been real fun. So it might be easier to do it the way I did it. But remember, there's more than one way often to get the answer to these questions, okay? So that's how my brain processed this. Let's move on to the next one. A little bit more algebra for you. So we're looking at number 20 here, and it says, find an algebraic expression equivalent to 3/2 times 6x squared minus 2/3 x. So basically, I'm going to distribute this and see what plays out, okay? So I'm going to start way up here at the top, so hopefully I have enough space to write. So I've got to distribute the 3/2 times the 6x squared. And then I'm going to change my color here so you can see it. I'm going to distribute that 3/2, multiply it by, now here's the tricky one. This is negative 2/3 x, okay? So negative 2/3 x. So we're going to start with, change my pen back to red. We're going to look at, I'm going to work over here, see if I can give myself some more space to work with. 3/2 times 6x squared. So I'm going to put 6x squared over 1 to make it a fraction like this. And now I'm just going to multiply that out. So I have 3 times 6 is 18. So I get 18x squared, okay? And then 2 times 1 is 2. Now I can divide that 18 by 2. I can simplify that. 18 divided by 2 is going to give me 9x squared. Now some of you might be like, oh, I already see the answer. If you want to, go ahead and mark B because you are pressed for time. You can do that because we already see part of it. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the rest of the math. Now I'm going to distribute this out 3/2. Now I'll go ahead and change my color so it's easy to follow. I say I'm going to change my color. Maybe I'm not. There we go. I'm going to change it to that blue. And so I have 3/2 times. Now, notice that was minus right there. That is a negative 2/3 x. All right, negative 2/3 x. So I'm going to multiply that out, and I get 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6. 2 times 3 is 6, and I still have that x. Well, I know I can divide 6 by 6 and get 1. Since it was negative 6 divided by 6, it's going to be negative 1. I have negative 1x, which I could write as just negative x. Now, do you see the equation? 9, or the expression 9x squared minus x. And that's how you solve that. It's just distribution. So the correct answer here is B. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one is one of those tricky ones because you've got to find the error. It says a student argues that 4 parentheses x minus 5 minus parentheses 6x plus 1 equals negative 2x minus 19. Identify the first step that contains the error, and it shows you the student's work step by step. I'm going to be completely honest with you. The first time I read this, I missed the mistake. So apparently mentally, I made the exact same mistake. So that tells you how easy it is to miss it. So the first thing we can tell is the student's just working with this side of that equal sign. All right. So just working with this, and we can tell that they're distributing that. They're distributing that. Okay. So I'm just going to write this out. 4x minus 5. And then this is a minus sign, so that's where it's tricky. Minus 6x plus 1. And we can assume this is a minus 1 if that helps you mathematically. So I'm going to multiply this out. 4 times x is x, so I get 4x minus 4 times 5 is 20. All right. Now, the next thing is that needs to be negative 1 times 6x is going to give me negative 6x. Now, watch this. Negative 1 times positive 1 is going to give me a negative 1. So we have minus 1. So there's the error right there. They didn't distribute the negative sign to the positive 1. They left it positive 1. So that positive 1, that should have been a negative right there. The error is in step 2. The error is in step 2. So be sure when you're distributing like that, if it's just minus in front of the parentheses, if it helps you, think of that as minus 1 in front of the parentheses. And that might help you not forget. I've got negative 1 times positive 1 is going to give me a negative 1. Okay? Negative times a positive is a negative. So that negative sign has to be distributed. All right, I'm running out of time, and we got 2 more questions. So this one's the easy one. So we came across an algebra one that is easy to do. So if you've been struggling, here's one to just give your brain a break. It says a consumer makes a down payment of $250 and plans to pay $60 per month for a phone service. If M is the total number of months, which of the following equations represents T, the total price paid? So if I were to draw this, T is that total price paid, okay? And we know that right off the bat, the person paid $250 of that total price. Then they paid the rest of this right here at $60 per month, okay? So we know that we're gonna have $60 over and over and over again. So our total is going to equal $60 times however many months those payments are made, plus the $250 that was already paid down. The correct answer here is B. $60 a month plus the $250 a month payment. That one should be pretty straightforward. Now this last one, I'm not gonna lie, this is a doozy. Now I'm from the South and we say funny things like doozy, but this one is tricky. This requires brain work. In fact, when I first read this question, I was sitting there thinking, if I were a student taking this test, I'd take my best guess, come back to it, I'd flag it and come back to it, because it worked my brain just a little bit to think about. So I'm going to walk you through my thinking and how I picked this apart as I read it. But I'll tell you guys, it took me 3, 4, maybe even longer minutes to reason through this. And because I started to doubt myself too. And it's just not super clear. And so if you read this and you're just like mind blown, what I want you to do, guess. Best guess, quick, 10-second guess. Flag it, and if you have time, come back to it. Do not sit here and antagonize over this question. It's one question, one, okay? Hopefully you don't have more than one like this. All right, it says, which of the following equations can be used to find the number of gallons of a 50% alcohol solution, X, that should be mixed with 10 gallons of a 30% solution in order to get a 40% solution. Okay, so the first thing I had to figure out was, what in the world is all this talking about? Okay, so really, I'm looking at an equation, and I know I've got, and I'm not putting sides in here, I know I've got gallons and 50% that I'm combining, it said that, mixed with 10 gallons, because I know how many gallons over here, I don't know how many over here, and 35%. And that's going to equal some number of gallons of a 40%. Now that's real messy and up there in the corner. But that's how my brain saw this, is I'm going to have gallons and 50% mixed with gallons and 30%. And it's going to have to equal some kind of gallons with 40%. Okay? So that's where I was like, okay, so at least I reasoned that part out. I know that it tells us that this X equals the gallons that goes with this 50%. And I know that this 10 gallons goes with this 35%. And I know I'm looking for the number of gallons that goes with this 40%. So some of you may be starting to put it together that way, okay? Now I know when I'm working with expressions, I can't work with percents. I'm gonna have to change those percents to decimals. I'm gonna have to change those percents to decimals. So when I have 50%, that written as a decimal is going to be 0.5. I'm going to move that decimal over 2 places. When I'm looking at 35%, I know to write that as a decimal, it's going to be 0.35. Now this gets tricky because it makes you want to think an answer that's not correct. Okay? Now I'm going to try to set this up as an equation or an expression. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at, I have 50%, which is 0.5, but I don't know how many gallons that is. They told us it was X. Okay, and I'm mixing that, so I'm going to put an addition sign in between there, with 35% of 10 gallons. Now over here, we didn't have it, so we have 0.35, if that helps you out a little bit. But we know the number of gallons. So instead of putting X, we can put 10. We can put 10. Now I'm just going to work this for a minute. So I'm left with 0.5X, and I can actually do the math. If I multiply 0.35 times 10, I can move that decimal over one place. And so now I have 3.5. So I know that's what I'm mixing together. And it's going to give me 40% of something. So I got 40%. If I change that to a decimal, I know I'm going to get, move that decimal over two places, 0.4. So I know over here I'm looking at 0.4. And for gallons, I don't know this. I know it's these two together. So over there, I had an X for gallons and a 10 for gallons. So X plus 10. All right. You can see now the correct answer is C. Correct answer is C. I struggled with this part. Like I had to stop and think and think and think and think and think. Like, okay, what would it look like on the other side? And I had to go back to that. I have gallons and a percent that I'm mixing with gallons and a percent to figure out how many gallons and a percent. So I knew I had this 0.4 and I knew I had to have gallons. So I took the gallons I knew, X and 10, and put it with it. Okay. Now, another way to solve this, all right, if you were just like, lady, I don't know what you just said, you totally lost me. Well, one, try rewinding and listening again, because I had to think it through a couple of times. Another strategy would be pick an easy number to work with, like 5 or 10, something easy to work with, and plug it in for X and see which one gives you something equal on both sides of these equations. So you could literally take the number 5, plug it in for X right here, plug it in for X right here, solve that. And I'm going to tell you now, if you solve it, you will see that this side of the equation equals or does not equal this side of the equation. If you do this one and plug in a number for X, both sides will be equal. So you could do that. That takes more time, but if you can't reason your way through this, notice I didn't put what this was up here because it should be algebraic thinking, but guys, y'all, this is really logic. This is really logic. Can you logistically think through this scenario to set it up? All right, so this is difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, come across a problem like this and it's just, especially if you're near the end of the test, oh my goodness, and it blows your mind, guess, flag it, and if you have time, come back to it. All right, now, same reminders I've had before. If you've watched these other videos, know the format of your test, know the time limits, that there may be field questions, know what the screen looks like, practice that, practice with the reference sheet and the calculators, practice your pacing. Don't do all your math practice slowly because it's a timed test. It's a timed test, all right? Again, get familiar with that reference sheet. Wouldn't have helped you on any of today's problems, but it will with some of the other ones. And if you need more help, if you need more practice, I highly recommend you check out our study guides and our free resources at our resource page. This includes a free diagnostic test when you go to this link that you can take. Our study guides have videos, instructional content, flashcards, practice quizzes, a ton of preparation to help you prepare for your exam. If you missed the first few videos on competencies 1 and 2, scroll back through our Facebook group and you can find those, or click on the video tab, or you can go to our YouTube channel and look for the FTCE Study and Test Prep playlist. And all the live videos from here will be there. I will be here next week, same time, to finish up this competency. So we'll be looking at the coordinate plane part of this competency. I will also be doing office hours live tomorrow right here in this group, which basically means I'm not on video, but I'm in your group answering questions. So again, if you're watching this video recorded, go ahead and drop a question in the comments. I'll gladly come back to that tomorrow when I'm in the live office hours. Of course, if you ever need help, just post that here in the group. You can even tag me and I will take a look and see how I can help you. I hope this helps you prepare for your exam, and I wish you all the best. Again, I'm Dr. Christy Mulkey with 240 Tutoring, and I'll see you next week.